You're not even going to see, the proper disclosures of these ingredients. But what you are going to see is these kryptonite ingredients hiding in plain sight. They will say modified food starch. They will say high fructose corn syrup. And the reason why you want to avoid those ingredients is because they're designed to be put in very small quantities, but just enough to trick your brain into having a very high reward response. That is exactly what MSG and high fructose corn syrup do, okay? But the unfortunate thing is that the FDA and these regulation bodies don't require these ingredients to be listed. And a lot of people in my generation, and maybe yours if you're watching this, are put under this spell of just looking at calories and nothing else, or just looking at how much protein and nothing else. Of all these artificial dyes, hydrogenated oils, excitatory neurotoxins, and they actually squeeze by putting them on the label in sort of shady ways. So fitness products, you have to make sure they're naturally sweetened. You have to make sure they don't have any sort of artificial fillers and artificial colors. And the reason why you want to avoid those is because the artificial colors are chemically similar in structure to estrogen. So that's a problem for men and women. Hey there, my name is Anthony Romano, and this video is going to be the fitness secrets millennials need to hear before it's too late, okay? Now, I'm somebody who's worked in nutrition, worked in supplements for years now, and I've fortunately been able to see the dark side of fitness, okay? And live to tell the tale. No, every time I say dark side, it feels so dramatic. I've seen the dark side of this, the products of this industry, okay? And there's certain things you need to be aware of, because if you don't get a handle on this now, you're going to be damaging yourself down the line, okay? So I've made other videos on these topics. I have a lot of videos on sort of, controversial fitness topics or against the grain fitness topics, but this is one that's so important for young people because our generation, right? I'm 23, you're probably around the same age as me. A lot of my viewers are actually older than me, funny enough, so maybe you're one of them, but hopefully the millennial people click this one, because our generation has this problem where everything is being so over marketed and over commoditized that we got to be aware, okay? And I'm going to tell you exactly how. Okay, so part of the arguments I'm making in this video are ones that are made just because the collective body of knowledge of surrounding fitness and nutrition is around the same between most people. There's a sort of mainstream understanding of, calories, macros, protein, fat, carb. There's this sort of collective background information that we all kind of have. And if you're newer, you might not have that yet, but that's even more important actually, because you kind of need to learn where that collective background knowledge is false, okay? So the first point is food and dieting and bulk and cutting is not just if it fits your macros, okay? I talked about this plenty of times, and if you've seen my other videos on this, just keep watching here, okay? Because food is not just macros. Food is actually more so the individual ingredients you see in the bottom of a label. So I've broken down other products in other videos, and whenever you see those non-medicinal ingredients or those non-nutritional ingredients, right? Like, that's where all the fillers are listed. That is where all the food and where it has been sourced is listed. So even though it takes some time to learn how to read these labels, if I'm looking at a pack of hot dogs, okay, or like a pack of sausages or something, right? You could see all the different hydrogenated oils in there. You can see all this, you can tell if the source is good or not based off of, if it's a high quality product of sausages or something, it'll say grass-fed, pasture-raised pork or something like this, right? Because all that really matters there is the source of what the animal ate in animal products, and in a greens product or a plant product, you want to see that you're missing out on these pesticides or herbicides. And the product will say herbicide-free, pesticide-free, this XYZ, that ingredient, this ingredient, okay? Because that's a selling point for these products. It's a selling point for them to, get cleaner versions of the same products. And this unfortunately creates this sort of, confusing landscape, because we see products that will say, all naturally sweetened, but in reality they'll use sucralose, they'll use a sulfate potassium, they'll still use artificial colors. Those claims mean nothing, but when you know the buzzwords of pesticide-free, herbicide-free, the actual natural sweeteners like stevia, okay? Monk fruit, okay? That is when you'll know that you actually have a clean product on your hands, okay? And this is very common in processed foods that you're not even going to see, the proper disclosures of these ingredients. But what you are going to see is these kryptonite ingredients hiding in plain sight. They will say modified food starch. They will say high fructose corn syrup. And the reason why you want to avoid those ingredients is because they're designed to be put in very small quantities, but just enough to trick your brain into having a very high reward response. That is exactly what MSG and high fructose corn syrup do, okay? But the unfortunate thing is that the FDA and these regulation bodies don't require these ingredients to be listed. So when you see high fructose corn syrup, you probably just think, they might even list it as fruit sugar or natural sugar, right? Something like that. But in reality, fructose is the sweetest sugar and it has the highest reward response in our brain. So high fructose corn syrup is what's in Coca-Cola. It's that very concentrated, processed, heated syrup that is made out of fructose, the sweetest sugar already, right? And they basically amplify how tasty and sweet it is by the hundreds, okay? So it's designed to keep you addicted to foods. So the first rule here is, beware of this whole if it fits your macros is gospel, because it is not. And that's the whole, unfortunately, that's the biggest piece of misinformation that all this revolves around. And a lot of people in my generation, and maybe yours if you're watching this, are put under this spell of just looking at calories and nothing else, or just looking at how much protein and nothing else. And a little side note, protein, you don't have to do exorbitant amounts of protein to do, certain muscle building goals and all these other things. You actually do need some fat as an energy source to actually digest that protein in your liver. So that's a freebie. But number one is food is not just macros. Food consists of these other ingredients in the non-medicinal component of the product. If it's a supplement, it'll say non-medicinal. If it's a food, it'll say non-nutritional or something. So we have that, but then there's a whole other layer to this that's way too deep to get into, because what you also have is the source of these ingredients. You have to know it has to be from a brand you trust, and their manufacturing practices are going to matter, because other essentially processing, or when they claim that they fortified it with vitamin D or other things like this, or with vitamin K or with vitamin A, right? Those are common ones, right? They might not actually be using the proper forms of those vitamins, okay? So a lot of the claims on the label are not just as they seem, is the main point here, okay? But I'm gonna move on because this one's also very important. So, number two, I have a video called, Are Certain Supplements Worse Than Junk Food? Or, certain supplements are worse than candy, something like that, right? I'll post the picture there. But basically, that video breaks down all the different problems with some of the most common and popular fitness supplements. And there's three that I break down in that video about ones that you probably used and how they have all these artificial dyes, hydrogenated oils, excitatory neurotoxins, and they actually squeeze by putting them on the label in sort of shady ways. So fitness products, you have to make sure they're naturally sweetened. You have to make sure they don't have any sort of artificial fillers and artificial colors. And the reason why you want to avoid those is because the artificial colors are chemically similar in structure to estrogen. So that's a problem for men and women, because when you have elevations in your levels of estrogen, doesn't matter if you're a man or woman, our levels of estrogen are very comparable. It's actually the testosterone that separates most men and women. But even then, this can disrupt your entire endocrine system and a lot of your hormonal processes. And I've read entire books on this. I have other videos explaining this, but I'm trying to rush through this video because you need to know, if you're a millennial, that a lot of the products that are in our food supply, let alone, these supplements, are ingredients that are going to have endocrine disrupting potential. They have hydrogenated oils, which are the biggest causer of inflammation and oxidative stress in our food supply, no doubt, okay? And I could get into the pesticides and stuff like that and herbicides, but those aren't really going to be in supplements as much. They're going to be in foods, unless certain ingredients were sourced from plants in those products. So you have to be aware of that as well. But the point is, you have to make sure, you have to vet the label. You can't just trust the little seal of approval on the product that says, oh, naturally flavored. No. And naturally colored. No. That they just say that because the FDA and these regulation bodies allow certain artificial components that have only been around for 10 years and haven't had as long of a lifespan to see if they harm people, when realistically a lot of emerging work shows that they do. because they haven't had a consensus on it as this is not natural or this is problematic, they're allowed to list these things as natural, or they're allowed to list these things as, clean products. Okay, you have to look at the label, and you have to look for stevia, you have to look for an absence of sucralose is best, an absence of sulfate and potassium, an absence of aspartame. These are other things you want to avoid, okay? But my artificial sweeteners video will clear that up for you in greater detail. Now, on that topic, sugar addiction. So I've talked about macros and how food is not just macros, but here's another thing. Many of you may know about the bliss point in food. This is where they combine a certain ratio of sugar, fat, and salt to make a food taste very good. And there's a whole science behind this, because a lot of food and supplement manufacturers, but more so food manufacturers, they'll even make these sort of fitness-oriented products, but they'll slip in little bits of these, excitatory neurotoxins or certain bits of sugar, small bits of fat, especially hydrogenated fat, and salt, and this will make the food taste very rewarding so that you essentially become addicted to the food, so that the certain bar becomes your favorite, okay? Especially with these fitness foods. And they're always hidden through terms like modified food starch, through spice extractives, yeast extractives, and realistically, there are clean ways around this. It's not like you have to give up and become full, Paleolithic diet, okay? There, even like right here, like I got some of these Quest chips, I got, a bunch of other things here that are natural fitness snacks in that way, right? And a lot of the supplements I use there, almost everything is clean to the bone. Everything that certainly I think that's in the frame is clean to the bone, but anything that is never fully clean, I will certainly let you know, especially anything I promote, but I try to keep everything as clean as possible. And most fitness influencers and people like that don't really know what they're talking about, these gurus. They'll promote these brands that are hugely popular, and if you want to see the ones I'm talking about, they're in that sort of video where I'm breaking down the fitness products that might be worse than candy, okay? But those brands, they use the worst ingredients possible, and then you have these huge name influencers advertising their stuff, but they don't know what they're talking about because we're taught to just look at the protein. It has 20 grams of protein, great. That doesn't make it a proper fitness product, okay? It doesn't even take into consideration all these other things that factor into protein absorption or all these other metrics we're supposed to look at, right? Like adding in a digestive enzyme is a huge hack to massively increase your protein absorption, especially for certain types of protease. And I have other videos on that. But the point is, we're taught to just look at the macro context. We're not taught to look at the micro context. And that's what my page is about. So I've talked about the hormonal side of things, okay? But I want to get into the hormonal side of looking at macros, okay? So this ties in with sugar addiction, okay? Many of the macros in foods that we have, there's little bits of those sugars, as I said, ones that are put in there strategically to keep you addicted to certain foods. But here's the thing. Part of the reason I talk so much about ketogenic dieting, prolonged fasting, intermittent fasting, is because when you learn to quit sugar, dieting becomes 10 times easier for you. In fact, 100 times easier, I'd say. Especially because when you do periods of time without any carbohydrates, right, you're not going to have any blood sugar spikes. So that's what I mean by quitting sugar. When you quit sugar entirely and quit carbs for a period of time, right, it doesn't have to be the rest of your life, even though I've been doing it for like 8 years now. The point is, not only do you have better brain function, better energy levels, and overall greater, I guess I would say, influence as a person because you feel so vibrant, but the point is you have access to fat as a way greater fuel, and getting rid of sugar addiction basically gives you your life back in certain ways, because a lot of people don't know that your willpower in the moment, your motivation in the moment, your energy levels in the moment is all dictated by your blood sugar. And if it goes up, so does your mood. And if it goes down, so does your mood, okay? And when your appetite is very, very strong, it's because you're in the trenches of that blood sugar spike. And that's a reason why fasting and ketogenic diets are so powerful. But nobody talks about them nowadays because maybe it seems too confusing for some people. But all you really have to do is cut out those carbs for a period of time. And when you get rid of all carbs and all blood sugar spikes, abstaining from sugar and food altogether is just dramatically easy. You never go to bed hungry. And that's something you have to keep in mind, because in the next 10 years, keto is going to be blowing up, okay? And I intend to be at the front of that. But it's already gaining a lot of popularity nowadays. all you need to know is that a lot of foods, and this sort of, again, back to this sort of if it fits your macros, flexible dieting, common background knowledge we all have, it overlooks the role of carbs as a signaler. Okay, it overlooks the role of carbs as how they influence your body to be hungry at certain points, regardless of how many you ate. If I have, an apple for breakfast, my blood sugar is still going to go up and then going to crash. And I'm going to drive home and start salivating when I see Wendy's, okay? That's simply the way our body is designed. Carbs are a luxury fuel. But this video isn't just about carbs. This video is about the myths that millennials need to get ahead of before it's too late. Sugar is one of them. Only looking at macros is one of them. Not looking at the, non-nutritional ingredients and the fillers is another one. Not being aware of endocrine disruptors and artificial dyes, and also paying attention to the hormonal side. By that I mean calories are the quantitative side, and hormonal diets, ketogenic diets that allow you to access fat for fuel are the qualitative side. So we have the quantitative and the qualitative. There's not simply just the quantitative. There's this, you can't have one side of a coin. You have better in tandem, okay? Both of them do. Keto works better when you count calories, and calorie counting is way easier when you have keto metabolism and your body is actually able to use fat. And newsflash, whenever you are able to use fat, all the studies that I've shown in other videos indicate that you can burn fat at 300% more effectiveness, okay? 200 to 300% more. And that's coming directly from body fat storage. So a lot of people interested in fitness altogether, especially people in, my generation, maybe you're watching it and you are, they're interested in these cutting diets or these muscle building diets. And the last two bonus tips I'll throw at you here are that with cutting diets, back to that keto metabolism, that's really where things get effortless, because you don't have to worry about managing your appetite and refeeding every couple hours. When you train your body to avoid blood sugar spikes, it functions 10 times better, and you don't pause, you don't stop or slow down, okay? And the one for muscle building is, as far as protein absorption goes, it's not just about jacking up the protein and the carbs. Protein and carb actually don't digest well together, and I have an entire video on this, because proteins digest in an acid and carbs tend to digest in a more alkaline environment. When you combine them, something isn't going to digest well, and you can watch my video on that to kind of understand things better. But if you're a millennial, you have to understand these principles. And there's way too much to jam into one 15-minute video here, but I tried to hit as many as I could. And I hope that I've dispelled some myths for you. I hope that I've opened your mind to certain ideas. But the main thing you have to take away here is that things are a lot more sophisticated than the mainstream likes to make it appear. Okay? And if you want to learn the secrets and the hidden, nooks and crannies of all that and how everything fits in together in a nice little puzzle, you should keep watching my videos. And you should subscribe to me right now. But thank you for watching this video and getting it up to this point. I do appreciate that. And leave me some comments. I'd love to help you out, whenever I'm able to, and answer some of your questions. So thank you. Also, go to my website, romanoketo.com, to work with me one-on-one. I do coaching, I do consulting, I do lots of stuff. And also follow my Instagram. All right, that's it for this one. Peace.